We have an update to a WSAZ investigation that we've been telling you about since last spring about our push to find answers about what the state of West Virginia knew. Several children died in cases of abuse and neglect.
The Justice Administration wouldn't give us any information, so when Governor Patrick Morrisey took over in January, we asked his administration if they would take a second look at our request. And not only did they grant them, they're now the driving force behind sweeping changes to the child welfare system in West Virginia.
Duties of the Office of Governor.
The duties of the Office of Governor.
January 2025, the start of a new year and new governor, Patrick Morrisey, taking West Virginia's top office. And just days on the job, WSAZ reached out, trying to get information and transparency from those tasked with protecting the state's most vulnerable children.
When I first took office, I received a letter from a local news outlet about one of their Freedom of Information Act requests that has essentially been stonewalled and ignored by the previous administration. The information had to do with the fatalities and near fatalities of children in West Virginia's child welfare system. There was no excuse, let me repeat, there was no excuse to keep this information shielded from the public.
Whose FOIA was that?
Well, that was from WSAZ.
That FOIA, or Freedom of Information Act request the governor is talking about, filed by WSAZ to the Justice Administration in two parts. The first in June 2024, the second in July 2024. Our ask: any prior history between Child Protective Services and 6 children investigators say all died or nearly died in separate cases of abuse or neglect. Some of those cases dating back to early 2021. But our requests were met with delay after delay by the Department of Human Services, and then a complete denial in September 2024. The department, under the Justice Administration, arguing the information is not public record and is strictly prohibited from releasing the information. Instead, only providing a link to an annual report, but that report having nothing on prior history. So when we asked the Morrisey administration to take a second look in January, WSAZ had no idea that request would spark this response. The West Virginia Department of Human Services is making a substantial policy change related to the disclosure of certain information regarding child fatalities and near fatalities caused by abuse and neglect. That change begins with this request.
There was a line in particular that really stuck out to me in this Freedom of Information Act request. In the letter back to us, it says, upon further review, it is apparent that the information historically made public falls far short of what the law requires.
Yeah, it was stonewalling, right? So I think I said that yesterday because there was a conscious decision to not provide the information that the public was entitled to, and that's not how we're going to work. If the public is entitled to the information, the public's going to get the information. So that's why I announced the change in policy.
That change in policy Morrisey announced Wednesday refers to the releasing of information in child fatalities and near fatalities required by law. And it is one of 6 steps the governor announced Wednesday, all aimed at creating transparency in the child welfare system.
Let's talk a little bit about the policy changes, in particular the intake process.
Yeah.
Can you explain kind of what is different about that now?
Well, I think one of the things we're trying to do is to get the benefit of comprehensive practice models. So we're in the process of doing outreach right now to try to improve the intake process. We're also providing a little bit more flexibility as to how we learn about the facts on the ground, that decision making can be made not only based upon a written referral, but there's a logic to it. If there are other information from third parties that should be part of the process that influences it, we should bring that in. We want to have a little bit more flexibility so we have the best information possible. That's the goal behind the intake process. The other piece of this is to make sure that the supervisors are really supervising the CPS workers, and that there's going to be a close review of all the cases at least on a monthly basis. Once again, one of the ways that you ensure that things don't fall through the cracks is you have constant systems and iteration. So you're reviewing things to make sure that, hey, we haven't heard about that issue in 3, 4, 5 months. A lot of bad things can happen. But if you're constantly reviewing things and trying to get to the bottom of it, then it minimizes the amount of incidents that you have. Doesn't eliminate it, of course, but it can reduce it. And that's the goal. We want to put these best practices in place.
What do you think is the biggest failure of the child welfare system?
You know, the other day I was at one of the listening sessions, and I wanted to make sure I took time out and to go listen. And if you heard the words, they were talking broken. They were talking frustrated. They were saying all these nasty words about the program. You don't want any program to be described that way. And obviously we inherited that. This is a problem that's been going on for a very long time. But I don't like to see problems remain. And, you know, the buck stops with the governor, right? That you have to have the ability to take on tough issues.
Morrissey admits the child welfare system is a complex issue, and the work to fix it is only beginning.
What we try to do is do policies that work for the greatest amount of kids. And so if we could save one kid's life, isn't that worth it? If we could make progress and reduce a lot of these incidents into the future, is it worth it? I think the answer to that is yes.
Governor Morrissey says he anticipates making more announcements in the coming days, weeks, and months related to child welfare reform.